Hello, everyone, and welcome to High Vibin' with Hilary and Rev Rob. Hi,
Hello,
Rev
everybody.
Rob.
Hey, Hilary. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing great. I am doing
Awesome.
wonderfully. I'm
Awesome.
happy that it's May. It's been a good month so far.
Yeah, and it's actually sunny here today, but that's good.
That is very good. Very good.
So, today is a really interesting topic. Today, we're going to discuss boundaries and the importance of them and why they need to be in place. So, I'd like to ask you a couple questions, Rev Rob, and
Sure. Hit
hear
me.
what you have to say about boundaries. Let's find out where you are. Do you hate disappointing someone?
I I do. Yes. Oh,
Okay.
yeah, I'll qualify later after we have all the questions because my relationship with boundaries is kind of unusual, but
Okay.
yes, I do hate
Okay.
disappointing somebody.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah, and for our viewers, answer these questions with us as you're watching this, because this kind of lets you know if you're someone who probably needs some boundaries. Um,
I'm
as
your
I
guinea
know
pig.
I
I'm
do.
your guinea pig.
Yeah, yeah. There's really only three questions, actually. It's
Okay.
not a big thing. Okay. So I also hate disappointing someone, and I am a recovering pleaser. So yes, the answer to that for me is a resounding yes. Second question. Do you say an automatic yes as a reflex, though you'd rather say no?
No, I do not say automatic yes.
Really?
I do not. No.
Very
No.
good. What do you say?
Uh, I usually will be like non-committal, and um, I always feel a question that ignites my own boundaries coming, and so I'm always like ready to I'm ready to kind of deflect anything until I can process it. So yeah, I do not say yes immediately.
That's good. I don't anymore, but for me, it was a reflex. I mean, literally, because especially when you're in front of a person and they're like, would you come over and help me paint this room? And I'm like, and it's a good friend or whatever. I'm like, sure. And the whole time I'm like, oh no, how do I get out of this? Now I'm more likely to say, let me check my schedule and get back to you. But I personally have an issue of, well, if I say no, then they won't like me, that kind of thing. And that's for me a lot of where this stuff is coming from, this enabling, this.
Yeah, no, I totally hear you. So I'm looking forward to the third question, but as far as the pleasing people, I've always now I'm curious as to how I've always been a people pleaser as well. I want to be liked, and yet uh, I have developed what I consider a pretty healthy, if not overly resistant relationship with boundaries. So, if anything, and we could talk about this later, but if anything, I need to learn when to open the boundaries that I actually kind of keep walls up for. So,
Oh, interesting. So you may offer too many boundaries or
yes,
mhm.
yes.
Interesting. Okay. And I'm probably the opposite and need to create more boundaries. So this is good for our audience
It
because
is.
I'm sure you'll either be one of us, one of these two, or I guess somewhere in the middle if you're super balanced. But then you're probably not watching a video on creating more boundaries.
Right, exactly. So yeah, because I definitely I love this discussion because I now feel like I'm almost the other. I'm on the opposite side of the boundaries.
Yeah,
But
interesting. Well, so the third question is, why are we afraid to say no? So for you, I guess you don't really this isn't something that you have a problem with because you say you do say no.
I do. So it probably depends on the person that's asking. If I am trying to, no, I guess not. No, I yeah, it was the boundaries discussion for me. I think comes from watching other people have their boundaries um, uh, get crossed, and feeling like, okay, well, I've got a solution for this, and it is not, and actually it's going to help you be liked longer, because of how a lot of times when you are somebody that has a lot of, that has no boundaries, there's a point where you shut down from whatever you're being, asked to commit to. And instead of putting up the boundaries, then I've seen people kind of like run from them. So it's like, okay, so so you say yes, 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 yes until you get annoyed with saying yes, and so you find some way to kind of like avoid then ever being asked, because you've not established that kind of dynamic where you can say yes when you mean it and no when you don't, or also no when you mean it. I'm sorry. So
So is that what you do then? You avoid having to say an answer. You just,
I do. Well, yes, I do. I do avoid having to. I do. So this is where I feel like that's not helpful to me or to somebody else that I am, in a relationship with, be it friend or anybody that's asking for help.
yeah.
I am quick to say, I don't know, like I got something to do. And it's only after that I do this that I have to go back and go, wait, that's, you have to do how others have done for you. So it's kind of a humbling thing to realize that sometimes you kind of throw this stuff up right away without
Yeah.
even, like, it's instinct.
Well, I will say that it's a lot easier these days for people who have a hard time saying no, like me, when you can text, because, it's not like the way it is when you're sitting in front of a person and you can't escape them. I suppose it would be hard, like if we were talking on screen like this and you asked me if I could do something and you're staring right at me,
Right.
it would be a little trickier. But when somebody sends a text and let's say they say, hey, can you come over this weekend and help me paint this room? It would be easy for me to, here's something I do, which is kind of embarrassing, but sometimes if I don't really feel like answering anything or committing, I'll just hit a thumbs up. And so it's completely like you're not even sure what to make of that. Like, oh, good, sounds good. It kind of gets them from asking anything else. But it is, I definitely think it's much easier to create this wall through text messaging.
Yeah, it definitely is. That's why I like texting so much, because I too feel like you did. Like that's where I feel like my wanting to be liked really comes in, because I don't want to have to face that person.
Right.
So texting is easier to say no, or I'll think about it, or whatever. Um, but I also, as an adult, and you realize how much people are willing to help you. Like I aspire to be someone who is there for people, but I also don't want to be somebody who enables others to kind of, you know, to take over their boundaries. And I've always felt like there is this, if you put up, I feel like the positive part of this for me has been, if you put up enough of a force field around you so that you're not setting a precedent of having those boundaries compromised immediately, then people learn. You train others around you to not expect that you're going to say yes every time. So that doesn't mean you have to say yes sometimes, but I do always feel like, okay, so I'm not going to respond right away. So if someone calls me and there's a sense of urgency, and I feel like they always expect me to respond right away, I don't respond. Well, we're really getting real here. So folks, if you're my friend, um,
Don't take it personally.
don't take it personally. No,
It's honest. Yeah.
because there are people that I know that if you are immediate on your response, then that is the precedent that is set from that point forward. And I would rather not disappoint you, because that's not realistic for me to think that I'm going to be there all the time. So let's just,
Right.
out of the gate, it's kind of playing hard to get in a way, but it's also just being realistic about how I'm going to be responsive. I don't want to set a precedent for you to think that I'm going to be there all the time, because I know I won't be.
Yeah.
I would rather have it be so that you know that when I say yes, that I mean yes, and I will follow through. I, again, as I said, that the the part to be aware of is when you keep saying, oh, implying that you're going to say yes at some point and you never do. So, you
Right.
can't.
And I think for me, and you probably feel this too, like I don't want to play games. I like, I want to be authentic. And so if something isn't speaking to me, like painting a room or something, um, I will eventually say no, because I would hate doing that. And it's one thing, I guess, if like, well, something also with boundaries, you have to feel like things work both ways, that there's an equal give and take. Because oftentimes the reason we have to create boundaries is because people just take.
Mhm.
And if, like, for me as a recovering pleaser, uh I got that a lot, even with people in my family, like, not, no fault of theirs, they're just reading my signals. So it's kind of interesting, but I do, for myself, I'm trying to be more authentic to that and not be afraid to say the harder words, because then it invites them to be honest. And I mean, ultimately, we would like everyone to be open and honest. I don't know.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
there, so there are reasons why we are afraid to say no to things. Certainly guilt, you know, you look like a terrible person if you don't do that. Then the fear of conflict, if I ask you to do something and you're like, no, and I'm like, it could start a whole thing. And then of course they won't like me. If I keep saying no, they won't ask me to do that. They won't be my friend, all of those things. I mean, those are all true and real. And one of the ways I've been trying to get around this is by using the affirmation, it is not my business how others see me. And so let me repeat that one. I feel like that's a really important
Very important. Yes.
affirmation. It is not my business how others see me. That's a good one. It really is. And
It
I
is.
do,
And it's the truth with a capital
it's
T. Like
it's
it's
the truth, because that's really what it is like we're always about how we're being seen by others. And some people aren't like that. Like, some people don't really care how other people see
my
them.
husband
Amazing. That's a
doesn't. Like
gift when
doesn't.
you
It's
come
a
in.
gift. So, but this brings up a good point because I think that as we've all gotten older, I wrestle with and because again my husband doesn't really care, so there is
Right.
a level of aspiration. It's like, well, God, I'd like to be able to like say no, I don't want to help you move because I hate moving, and why would you even ask me that? And so his good friends don't ask him to help them move, or if they do, then I'm like, well, then I have no pity for you if he does say yes because he's told you that he hates it, so have fun. But then there's this idea of, so what, and I don't have an answer to this. How do we say yes and no, and then also gauge um, what is really appropriate for somebody who is a mature adult? So that obligation versus, you know, what should we do because that's what mature adults do? Like, you go with someone who asks you to, I don't know, to accompany them to something that is really difficult for them, but maybe to a hospital, for instance. So you're going to go to, your friend says, can you come with me to the hospital to see my mother, or can you hold my hand? And you hate hospitals, and you hate the smell, you hate how it makes you feel. So this, when we're talking about saying no, do you say no because this is something that you will feel so inauthentically disingenuous about that you'd rather not be that person that is being relied on for support? Or do you say, gosh, I need to grow up and this person needs me in this space, I need to get out of my comfort zone in order to be able to be helpful? And I
Right.
feel like this is where I always get conflicted, and especially that intersection of, if I do throw walls up and you say yes all the time, somewhere in the middle is this place where we should say no if we really don't want to do something and we're going to be resentful, but we also should be open to, like, well, this person needs me. I need to be bigger
Absolutely.
than the situation, than my boundary. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And you can feel into it. Well, maybe we should talk about, since you're bringing this up, like ways to feel into, if you should help or not. Like you were saying, how do you know? How do you know? Well, so first of all, okay, we want to take our time before responding, and so we say something like, oh, let me think on this and I'll get back to you. That's number one. The second one is to do a gut check, so to take some breath and to sit quietly, after we've said, let me get back to you on this. So we're in a calm place. We're not like, oh, so we sit, we do a gut check and we think to, and that's when it comes in, well, this could really help this person. They don't ask a lot from me. This is, certainly the more we give, the more we get. So it's like, we benefit from helping people for sure. So we feel into it. So we sit quietly and we feel into it. And then the third thing is to speak our truth in a clear, concise way. So whatever we decide, we owe it to them and to ourselves to tell them, I don't feel comfortable painting this, you could do the old bullshit, I've got plans, right?
Right.
But if you want to be on the up and up, because everything is an energy anyway. So if you want to create, more peaceful energy for yourself, you would be honest. I have a friend, she's really good at this kind of stuff. And she just says the very minimum. She just says, no, I'm sorry, that doesn't work for me. And it's like one of those sort of vague responses where you're like, why doesn't it work for her? Is it the time? Does she not want to do it? What's the reason? But it doesn't matter what the reason is. She's being very honest. She's not lying. She's being true to herself.
Right.
She's not putting emotion in it, so that's kind of where I'm trying to go, where I can't stand, and I do this, but I can't stand where people are like, well, I can't do this because I have my sister's this, and then I'm going here, and then I have
Right.
to do this.
Yeah.
And you're sort of like, I don't freaking care. Like, yes or no,
Yes. Yes. Or no. It's true.
So I know that's what people want to hear. And I think the reason I'll often offer this whole explanation is to lessen my guilt,
Yeah, I think where we are now in this discussion is exactly where I feel like that's where it all gets muddy. And have you ever had somebody do something for you that you would never do for them? Like that's the most humbling experience. And
yeah,
either you've asked them to do something and they said yes and you didn't expect them to, and then they do it, or they volunteer to do it. And so I feel like that's always my signal then, because I'm honest. Usually if somebody's doing this for me, I'm honest. I'm saying, just so you know, I can't say that I would do this in the same way that you're doing this to me. And it's then that I'm going, okay, so I need to figure out what I would do that somebody else wouldn't do. So that's my signal. Like it's the pay it forward thing. So, I don't have to like prostrate myself in front of this person and be, feel guilty that they're doing this for me. I just have to pay it forward. I just have to go, wow, that's amazing. And I can do this amazing thing for somebody else that they would never want to do or think of doing. And I can be that, I can apply myself in that way.
Well, for sure. And if you use your strength, like, okay, like for me, I'm a life coach, so I'm really good at listening to other people's hardship and either just listening or helping or whatever. So I would always volunteer to do that. But to take your car to get it emissions tested, and the reason I bring that up is because I'd like to bring a real live example in now, because I think this is a good example. So my husband, Kevin, is a wonderful human, and he just does stuff that I would never want to do, that he just volunteers to do for me.
Right.
He's running his own business. He takes my car, he's getting the oil changed for me. And then he's like, oh yeah, I'll take your car for emissions. And then I'm going to take it. It has to go to the dealership for something. Like he's doing all this stuff for me in the middle of his work day. And his work is much more stressful, obviously, than mine. And I think to myself, that's a case where I think to myself, oh my God, I don't think I would ever do this for him. So last night he needed me because he runs a body shop. He often has to pick up people's cars and bring them to the shop and drop them off and everything. So it was like 8:30 at night. And he was like, hey, can you come with me where I need to go I need to pick up this car and whatever. And everything inside of me was like,
Oh, that's the last thing you want to do, right? Yep.
30, I'm tired, I don't want to, or whatever. But because, doggy, and ring. But
yes, we have a house guest, and so he's
but so, I said yes because I was thinking about all of the things that he does for me. He does so many things for me. How could I not? You know what I mean?
yeah.
So, yeah.
So I think that's good because you are then thinking, okay, so I've got to either do this, but so this is the thing, I've said no to things immediately that it's like, oh, this is one of those times, like you're not obligated, but you know that it's the right thing to do. So, but it does require, like you said, doing a gut check and then being real. Like you can't get indignant just because you don't want to do something. That's not what this is. It's like you have to actually think, if I say yes to this, I'm not really letting a boundary be walked over. I'm actually creating something new for myself. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
I'm going beyond my
that goes back to to what I said before about creating balance. If you have somebody that's always doing stuff for you, you have to create the balance. If you don't create the balance, there's no harmony in the relationship. There has to be a balance. If one person is doing everything, I guarantee that there's some fighting going on in the relationship. Okay, so here's the next thing. Let me see how we are on time. Oh, okay. So, what would you do, Rob?
Okay.
And what would you do, audience? A close family member asks you to do something you don't want to do. You feel it's their responsibility, not yours. What do you do?
I wouldn't do it.
What would you say?
Yeah, I think I would come up. This is not the aspiration, but like I would probably just find a way to politely not engage in that.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have it in me now to imply that I think that it's something their responsibility or not. I mean,
right. And the thing is, if you do something that you feel like is someone else's responsibility, I mean, there's a lot of people who don't want to do anything and they just push all their shit on other people.
Right.
And if this is that kind of person, by you helping them, you're enabling them.
Right.
They're never learning
Right.
that they need to be self-sufficient or that they can handle this on their own.
Right.
So sometimes for those of you who are more like me and have a trouble saying no, this is a good reason for you to say no, is that you help their growth, right? Don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Because I don't. Yeah. Because there are things people have to learn. And
yeah. How about this? A friend you're not into anymore calls and asks you to meet up for lunch, but you have no interest. You don't have anything in common anymore. And it's not a text message.
Okay, so I can't text. Can I ghost?
No. Let's say you run into somebody in person and they're like, oh my gosh, Rob, I haven't seen you in so long. Here, get your calendar out. Let's meet for lunch.
So I would likely it would depend on if this happened often. I think there's a point for me. It's like if we keep having that, let's meet, and then we don't, then the whole thing feels terrible, and then I feel terrible because I'm usually the one saying no. If I assess that I'm usually the one saying no, then I will likely be like, okay, let's do it. I will then say, let's just get this done. We'll log in the time that we have now, and that'll put us, that'll keep us good for a while. So I probably would if we keep doing it. And in DC, it's easy to run into people and have that kind of exchange. I would probably do it thinking I was going to kind of cross that one off then for a while until we would meet again. Like,
Okay.
unless I really felt like this would be opening a door and access to me that I wouldn't be able to close.
Right. And that's what I'm implying. That kind of friend.
Ooh. Yeah, I think if I felt like this was something that I could not sustain and that I knew that they would expect complete and utter sustenance, I would then say no.
Yeah.
I'd probably not tell them why, but I would say no.
In person, you would say no, you would just say no.
I would probably leave it open, like, oh, I'll let you know next week, or
Right.
I'll let,
To be
I'm not coming off
fair,
as very brave in any of this, so
no, you know what? I mean, but it's honest. It's honest. We're human beings trying to navigate the world and trying not to hurt people in the process, So I
right.
understand. So I appreciate your honesty because to be fair, if that happened to me, which it has happened to me on many occasions, a lot of times when you're a high vibe person, people glom onto you. And sometimes a lot of the people that glom on are a much lower vibe, maybe very negative,
If they make you feel uncomfortable. I mean, I do have a real life story to this. It's like I've got a friend who in high school, um, uh, he, he was just a very like needy person, but in the neediness meant that he would be nasty to people to get them to be, he would build big guilt trips and the stuff to try to get you to do what he wanted you to do. And so recently we reconnected with a core group of us, and for me that was enough. Like, okay, I haven't seen you in so long, and that's great. And then he recently reached out and left a message, and then started to like harass and ended up leaving a really nasty, hitting to the core message about how horrible I was. And it was the kind of thing like I didn't have any guilt about this because I thought
you're not
this is
friends.
why any engagement at all would have been even worse than this. Like I nip
Yeah,
this in the bud and hold tight because the boundary would have been open in a way that I would not have been able to close. I would not have been comfortable, and I had to
yeah,
withstand the somewhat true nasty comments to me because that's probably how he felt about me at that time. But
right.
so
So this has happened to me on many occasions. And usually what I do is in person, I say the right, I'm like, oh yeah, mostly because it catches me off guard. And then when I get in the car or something, I'm like, oh my God, like, what did I just do? I don't want to be a part of this. And so often I will send a note. Now I've done a couple, one where I was honest, where I said, I just don't think we fit anymore. But I wish you well kind of thing. And while that worked, I mean, there were definitely, I'm sure, hurt feelings. I've ghosted before. And I've done what you said, where like you go that one time, you think, well, I'll be good for a while, but you never are, because then lo and behold, they reach out again and
right.
again, that kind of thing. Um, so I think if I'm being honest, most of the time, I would make the decision, like I say the right thing in person. And then when I'm by myself, I will find the bravery to reach back out and say, oh, I'm so sorry, I can't do this or whatever, and just keep putting them out off. But, either way, however we get there, of course, like I said, I aspire to be like my friend and just say, I'm sorry, that doesn't work for me. And that's it. But when you can't do that, at least we're still working toward honoring ourselves, right, in the
Yeah,
process. And,
really.
you know, and, we'll get there. um, okay. So we have, about, not much time at all. Okay. So this last thing that I just want to share is just another exercise that people can do if they don't know what to do about boundaries. They know they need to set one. So you pick a person that is exhausting you. And you come up with a boundary list of what you're willing to tolerate and what you're not, and what you're not. And then you keep it near you to remind you that you've created this list. Okay. So this would have to be somebody who
You see regularly.
You see regularly and is always taking. So I did one. I'm not going to tell you who it was, but I'm just going to say what I said, just for the benefit of people too. My list was, I will not tolerate you talking nasty to me. Oopsie, we're at 30 minutes. I will not tolerate you talking nasty to me. I am willing to talk to you 1 time a week. I will not do manual labor. I will not pay every time we go out. And oh, and I will always say I need to think it over before I commit. And so that's my list. So
Can I ask you, was that do you remind yourself of those things, or do you actually articulate them to that person?
no, you don't articulate to the person. I suppose you could, but it would cause a big fight, I would guess. No, it's really for you to keep in the forefront of your mind that you're not going to allow this person to continue walking all over you. And in this case, this person did and continues to try to walk all over me. It's how they are in the world, you know.
Right.
I'm sure it's not just me. And so I just want to say it again so that our people can remember this. So you pick a person that's exhausting you, you come up with a boundary list of what you're willing to tolerate and what you're not, and then you keep it near you to remind you. And so when you have another interaction and you get a text message asking you, or you get a call asking you, or whatever, you remind yourself, no, I said I wasn't going to do manual labor. I'm not doing manual labor. And that's it. So yeah, so I think that's all I got, other than to say those 3 things again, to make sure that you don't respond right away, to always say, let me think about this and get back to you. And then when you're in the privacy of your own home, to do a gut check and see if it makes sense. And then to speak your truth in a clear, concise way. I'm sorry, I can't help you.
Yeah, that's good. I think the ending of being truthful about not helping, that's important, because that's where I am with, I can establish a boundary that I assume people see because I haven't articulated it. And for the most part that works, but sometimes it doesn't. So, and you do have to be honest. So.
Yeah. And so the goal is, when you're honest, to keep all the emotion out of it, to just make it short and sweet and concise. And then, what's a person going to say when you're saying, I'm sorry, that doesn't work for me? That's different than, oh, I'm busy on that day. Then somebody can say, oh, well, can you do it the following week or whatever?
Right.
But if you just say, I'm sorry, that doesn't work for me, what are they going to say?
Yeah, it's tough because I feel like I'm passive aggressively trying to say, okay, are you listening to my social cues by saying, no, I can't do this, or I'm very busy. I'm assuming that that's what most people do. So people can either not pick up on social cues, or they can be, they can force you to be honest with them by saying, okay, so how about next week or the week after? So, either way, yeah, when you realize that maybe the social cue is not working, that you've got to be honest for sure.
Yeah. And firm. Yeah. And of course, you're going to bounce back and forth. You're not going to be perfect all the time, but we need boundaries, and boundaries don't have to be seen as a negative thing.
They don't. You can set them up way before you ever get involved. And that's
exactly. And every relationship should be balanced. And when it's not balanced, it's not working. So either get out of the relationship or try and balance it. But that's about it. I mean, that's about it. So on that note,
our boundary of time is upon us.
Our boundary of time is upon us. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, please let us know in, the comments below what you thought, how you deal with boundaries, any suggestions.
Or don't.
Or don't. And definitely subscribe and follow us. So that's all I got. Anything else?
All right, guys. I think that's it. Have a great week. We'll see you here again.
Peace out.